will start us with the sponsors. Hopefully the other fellows will be getting on momentarily. A Year of Learning, Dr. Paul Koenigsberg and his brother, Dr. Sam Koenigsberg, Shimon Ruven ben Labush, and Ed Goldberg's cousin, Nissen Hara, Nissen ben Fardosa. Paula and Bob Romberg, in memory of their dear friend Julian Smith, Yehuda ben Yisrael. Malcolm Mann, Alaa Shalom, in memory of her family murdered in the Holocaust. Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel Bas Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Many friends of Dr. Marvin Blush, Moshe Shalom ben Yitzchak Halevi, friends of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov, friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef, friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, Cheryl Sher, her children and grandchildren, in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva, Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Uriel Paul Federbush, Uriel Pinchas ben Harav Shimon, friends of Joel Wolf, in memory of Yosef ben Chaim, Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edel Bas Yaakov. A Month of Learning by Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of her father, Yaakov ben Yosef, by B. Pizer, in memory of her mother, Rezel Bas Shammai, and her stepfather, Avram Michal ben Shmuel Halevi, by Josh and Carol Sanborn, in memory of his mother, Chiena Bas Aryeh Leib, and his father, Shmuel Aryeh ben Baruch, Mel and Haran Haller, in memory of his mother, Fega Bas Yaakov, Andrea and David Dolney, in memory of her mother, Evelina Bas Shimshon. Have a Week of Learning by Mark and Catherine Linder, in memory of his nephew, Eretz Paul ben Sirlus. Today, being the 3rd of March, we have a Day of Learning plus Torah Fund by Evelyn and Isaac Blachor, in memory of her mother, Pero Rivka Bas Harav Menachem Mendel Eliezer. Today also is a Day of Learning by Sarah Roz, in memory of her father, Shebsa ben Aaron, and by Ernie Bloom, in memory of his mother-in-law, Masha Bas Yitzchak. Shamas have an Aliyah, Kranker Rafia, Velte Shir Shem Atzliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good gebenched yar.
Amen.
Okay, I don't see Marvin yet this morning. Hopefully he's okay and will be joining us, as well as some of the others. Since my internet connection is unstable.
Yes, it's very unstable. I'm having problems too.
Okay, let's pick up where we left off a little bit. We're on Kaf Bet, Amud Aleph.
Honey, the iPad, in case you need to switch,
Thanks.
because that seems to be working.
We're about 9 lines down on the Amud. Okay, remember our discussion dealt with whether or not there were foods that required a blessing after them in the same place. That excluded water or fruit, and therefore the question is whether you needed to say a blessing if you were going to leave, whether you needed to say a blessing, some sort of blessing after it, and then when you come back, a new blessing again. Okay, that was the argument. That was the issue, right? And so we saw, just going back briefly, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda the Amora, B'medvarim Amorim, what were we talking about, namely foodstuffs, B'zman shehenichu sham miktzat chaverim, where they left colleagues there, as opposed to a previous writer that said they could have left an elderly person or an ill person there. Aval lo hinichu sham miktzat chaverim, but if they did not leave at that place any colleagues? K'shehen yotzin, when they leave, te'unin bracha lemafreya, says Rabbi Yehuda. They do require a blessing, some blessing after. Uk'she'en chozrin, and when they return, te'unin bracha lechatchila. They do need a blessing again at the outset. Ela rather ta'ama, says the Gemara, here's the reason. The b'devarim ha'te'unim bracha la'achoreihen bimkomam, the k'shehen yotzin, that regarding food items that require a blessing after them in that place when they leave, ein tu'unin bracha lemafreya. They don't require a blessing afterwards. Uk'shehen chozrin, and when they return, ein tu'unin bracha lechatchila. They don't need a new blessing. Aval dvarim she'ein tu'unin bracha al achareihem v'komam. But those food items that do not require a blessing after them in their place, afilu l'rabanan, even according to the rabbis, k'shehein yotzin, when one leaves, a group leaves, tu'unin bracha lemafreya, they do require a blessing after, uk'shehein chozrin, and when they return, excuse me, tu'unin bracha lechatchila, they require a new blessing at the outset. Lema, let us say then, to have a tiyuf to the Rabbi Yochanan, that this is going to be a proof text against the view of Rabbi Yochanan. Because remember, Rabbi Yochanan basically said that was not the case. V'lav mi otivne chada zimna, but haven't we already brought a proof text against him a previous time? Nema meha nami tahave tiyupta. Shall we say also from this, there also would be a proof text against him? Amar lecha Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan would come back with the following. Hu hadin da'afilu dvarim she'ein tu'unin bracha la'achreihem b'mkomam. That is the law. In other words, that kind of reasoning applies to those foodstuffs where ordinarily, let's say, we don't require a blessing after them. Nami, and also, ein srichin levarech, that one would not have to lead a new blessing. V'hadikatani akru ragleihem, and the fact that the Braita used the words that they, so to speak, got up on their feet. Okay, lahodiacha kochoda Rabbi Yehuda, to show the strength of Rabbi Yehuda's position. The afilu dvarim shetu'unin bracha la'achareim bimkomam, that even those items, foodstuffs, that do require a blessing to be recited after them in their place, tama tehinichu miktzat chaverim, that the reason is because they did leave behind some colleagues. Aval lo hinichu miktzat chaverim, but if they did not leave behind any colleagues, k'shehen yotzin tu'unin bracha lemafreya, when they leave, okay, then they do require a blessing after, right, that they've eaten. Uk'shehen chozrin, and if they return to that place, tu'unin bracha lechatchila, they do require a blessing anew, a brand all over again. Because it's almost like, we might argue, it's like they're starting a new meal. Now, says the Gemara, Tanya kavate the Rav Chisda, and a Braita also was taught like this, according to the view of Rav Chisda, that said as follows: Chaverim shahayu mesubin lishtot yayin. Let's assume we have colleagues, our friends, that are gathered to drink some wine. And remember, wine was considered davar chashuv, something important, and therefore one would require a blessing after it. Va'akru ragleihem, and they got up on their feet and they went out. V'chazru, and then they came back. Ein srichin levarech. According to Rav Chisda, they do not have to say a blessing. Now, says our Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. But the Braita now we have teaches the following. B'nei chavura shahayu mesubin. That if you have a group of colleagues, friends, that were reclining, v'kidesh alehem hayom, and in the course of that meal, it became dark enough that the start of Shabbat was beginning. Okay. Mevi'in lo kos shel yayin. They bring one of them a cup of wine. V'omer alav kiddushat hayom. And he says the blessing for the sanctification of the day. In other words, he says Kiddush. Usheni omer alav birkat hamazon, divrei Rebbe Yehuda. And a second person says grace after meals. Okay, these are the words of Rebbe Yehuda. So the implication is that a separate meal? Okay, or have they said Kiddush because Shabbat has started, but then finished that meal clearly, and then for a new meal would need to say, again, new blessings. However, what happens? Rabbi Yossi Omer, Ochev Holech Ad Shetechshach. So our question is the blessing that's being said. Question number one. Notice it said in the Gemara, right, that one would say a blessing over the wine, implying Kiddush Hayom, and another would say blessing over the Birkat Hamazon. Now, does that mean that they're two different people saying blessings on two different cups, or simply two people saying blessings over the same cup? So can you make more blessings over one cup or not? And not only that, but it brings the following second question. Which takes precedence? Is it the recitation of the Kiddush because Shabbat has started? Or is it the recitation of Birkat Hamazon because you want to end the meal? So that's our second question. So we're left with two items as we continue on the top of Kaf Bet Amud Beis. Okay? Gamru, says the Gemara. Let's assume that they finished the meal. What happens then? Kos Rishon Mevarech Alav Birkat Hamazon. The first cup is used for saying grace after meals. V'hasheni Omer Alav Kiddushat Hayom. And the second cup is used to say the Kiddush for the start of Shabbat. Now that's exactly the opposite of what we just saw before. Amai, asks the Gemara, why is that the case? Why is there a difference if they finished the meal or Shabbat started while they were still having their drink or their meal? V'nimrinhu l'travahu achad kasa, says the Gemara. So let us say that they can do the two of them on one cup, namely the Kiddush for the day and the Kiddush and the Birkat Hamazon. Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna, Amar Rav Sheshet, in the name of Rav Sheshet. Ein omrim shtei kiddushot al kos echad. That we do not say two, so to speak, in parentheses, kiddushes. In other words, we don't say a blessing using wine to show the sanctification of a time or a situation on the same cup. My Tama, what's the reasoning? Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, he says, Lefi she'ein osin mitzvot chavilot chavilot, that we do not take mitzvahs and sort of bundle them together, okay, in packages. In other words, if it's a mitzvah, it should be worthwhile for us to say a specific separate blessing and perhaps use a cup, okay, for that case. But the Gemara is going to challenge that idea. Velo, and you say, no, we don't, so to speak, bundle group mitzvot together. Vahatanya, but here don't we have taught in the Braita the following. Hanichnas lebeito, one who enters his house b'motzei Shabbat at the conclusion of Shabbos. Mevarech al hayayin, he says a blessing on wine, v'al hamaor, and on the light, v'al habisamim, and on the fragrances, v'achar kach omer havdalah al hakos, and afterwards he says the blessing of havdalah on hakos, okay, which again includes, right, blessing of wine. V'im ein lo, but if he doesn't have enough wine, elakos echad, for a single cup, manicho la'achar hamazon, then what he must do is put it aside and wait, okay, to use that wine as part of his blessing of Birkat Hamazon. And then what happens? Umeshal shalan kulan la'acharav. And therefore he sort of grabs them. He puts the three of them. In other words, the Birkat Hamazon is one. The blessings for Havdalah, okay, is two. And all of the others become a third item. He groups the three of them, so to speak, together as a single entity. Ein lo shani, says the Gemara. But if he doesn't have sufficient wine, that's a different situation. So therefore we can't learn from that Braita the example of how to handle our question. How about the following then, says the Gemara? Vaha Yom Tov shechal liot acharei Shabbat. What about here, a situation where the holiday starts, right, on Motzei Shabbos? Okay. De'itle, and a situation is that he has enough wine. Okay. Va'amar Rav, and in that case, Rav says the order of activities is Yod Kaf Nun Hey. Yayin, Kiddush, Ner, Havdalah. Okay? That's what it stands for. Okay? Amre. And we would say in that case, Midelo Amar Zman, since he did not include in that order a blessing for time, namely recitation of the blessing of Shehechianu, right? Miklal the B'Shvi'i Shel Pesach Askina. Then you must be saying by that example that you're talking about the seventh day of Pesach coming out Motzei Shabbos, because you wouldn't say Shehechianu in that situation. The Kol Mai Dahavele Achile. Why? Because it's possible, so argues, that maybe all the wine that he had, he's consumed, velivle, and he has no more wine. And therefore that's why he has to bundle them all together. So the Gemara tries to prove it from another case. V'hayom tov rishon. What about the fact that we're saying no, that Motzei Shabbos, like this year, for example, coming Pesach, that Yom Tov starts, the first day of Yom Tov, okay, is Motzei Shabbos. De'itle, and he has enough wine. Va'amar Abaye, and Abaye says, if that's the case, what order do we follow? Yayin, Kiddush, Zman, Ner, Havdalah. Okay, but instead, what happens? We see a different situation. Rava says, Yayin Kiddush Ner Havdalah Zman. So even though Abaye and Rava argue on the order of things, but they agree that multiple blessings are said over a single cup of wine, okay, despite the different order. So the Gemara now says the following: Ela Havdalah v'Kiddush Chada Miltehi. In that argument between Abaye and Rava, the fact that they can say multiple blessings over the one cup is because Havdalah and Kiddush are, in a sense, one single item. You make Havdalah to the end of Shabbat and at the same time bring in the holiday. Birkat Hamazon v'Kiddush. But to use one cup for Birkat Hamazon and the same cup for Kiddush, Trei Mileninhu. These are two separate things. Why? Because either one is at the beginning of the meal and one is at the end of the meal. Or you could argue that the intent is different. Okay? So either way, that's the point of the Gemara. Going on, however, Gemara is concerned that having seen this machloket, this argument between Abaye and Rava, as to what is the order, appropriate order, okay, on that occasion, let's discuss that in more detail. And so the Gemara says, Gufa. Let's go back and look at that situation. Yom Tov shechal liyot achar haShabbat. Let's assume it's the first day, okay, of Yom Tov, starting, as we said, that happens this coming Pesach, okay? And what's the status? What do we do? Okay? Rav Amar, or let's say it could even be the last day. Rav Amar, Yayin Kiddush Ner Havdalah. Okay? Rav's argument is you do have the blessing over the wine. Okay? You then have made Kiddush. You have a light to mark the end of Shabbat, and then Havdalah. Ushmuel Amar, Yayin Ner Havdalah Kiddush. Shmuel disagrees and says, yes, the wine comes first, but the other items, you've got to usher out the Sabbath first before you bring in the new holiday.
Don't they say Shechayonu then?
Notice, so if we're talking about it being the last day,
Last day, okay.
then you wouldn't have Shechianu,
Right.
according to this. Okay? That comes back to our earlier example, right? Now, I'm not going to do the whole Kaf Gimel today, but I want us to see the first case we said was, I'm looking at my extra notes, Rav, who said wine, Kiddush, candle, Havdalah. The second case was Shmuel, who said wine, candle, Havdalah, Kiddush. Now we're going to get to a few more. Virava, what does Rava say? Amar says, Yayin, Havdalah, Ner, Kiddush. Wine, Havdalah, candle, and Kiddush. So he agrees with Rav and Shmuel that wine is first. He agrees with Shmuel that Kiddush is last, but still disagrees. Next one, Velevi Amar, Kiddush, Ner, Yayin, Havdalah. Levi says Kiddush, candle, wine, Havdalah. Right? So he might agree with Rav on all the rest. V'Rabbanan Amrei. Excuse me. And the rabbis say, Kiddush, Yayin, Ner, Havdalah. Kiddush, wine, candle, Havdalah. Okay. So the rabbis agree with Levi and rabbis and Levi agree. Kiddush first. But that disagrees with Rabbah, Shmuel, and Rav. Next example. Mar Berei de Rabbana Amar. Ner, Kiddush, Yayin, Havdalah. He argues that the order is candle, Kiddush, wine, Havdalah. So Mar then agrees with the rabbis, with Levi, and with Rav that Havdalah is last. Okay? But in terms of the others aspects, he disagrees. Another sage, Marta Amar, Mishmei de Rabbi Yoshua, Ner, Yayin, Havdalah, Kiddush. Okay? He's giving this statement, right? That in the name of Rabbi Yoshua, the order is candle, wine, Havdalah, Kiddush. What happened? Right? Now, just to finish up, Shalach le Abuha de Shmuel. The father of Shmuel then sent to Rebbe the following request. Yilamdenu Rabbeinu Seder Havdalot. Let the master teach us, right? What is the appropriate order? Heach, what is it supposed to be? Shalach le, and he sent them the following. Kachama Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi, Sha'amar Mishum Aviv. This is what Rabbi Yoshua, right? Said Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi, said in the name of his father, Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya. And he said it in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Chananya, Ner, Havdalah, Yayin, Kiddush. Candle, Havdalah, wine, and Kiddush. Okay. So we now have here an 8-way machloket. Okay. Now,
Reb Green, are you going to poskin on this one?
I'm not sure. I'm going to try something.
Okay.
All right.
Yaknahas is the rule, no?
Okay. There you see it. Can everybody see that?
Yes,
Yes.
the table, yeah.
So this, what? All right. So this is the diagram that the Koren provides to show the differences of the opinion. Okay. So we're going to just notice that in 1, 2, 3, 4 places, they agree that Havdalah is at the end. Okay. On the other hand, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 that says Kiddush is at the end. Okay. So the question really comes down to, do you end Shabbat first, or do you start the new Yom Tov first? Here too, on the beginning, we've got an even wider spread, right? 3 of them say wine, 2 of them say Kiddush, 3 of them say candle. So again, so there too, we see a wide a disagreement. Okay. Now,
I thought they used Yak Nahaz.
Right. Okay, so Zev, Baruch Shekivanta, you're right, that ultimately the Gemara is going to need to come to some sort of a definition, okay? And in that definition, it will spell out what the halacha is going to be and ultimately what it needs to be done. But I wanted us to see the fact that there was this wide variety that the Gemara shows us. And as a result, okay, we're going to see shortly that as we look at tomorrow's Gemara, there's going to be an interesting mashal to try to give an explanation and as a basis by which the halacha is going to be determined. Okay? So I thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to try to share this. So that
Thank you. Thank for the diagram. Very helpful. Great.
Okay.
Thank.
So that we can then see what we'll do tomorrow as the Gemara continues and tries to come to a conclusion. All right.
Have a great day. Be well.
Have a good day.
Everybody,
Thank you so much.
take care and
Yak
stay
Nahas. Yak Nahas.